Attention pro athletes. Want to secure your financial legacy and thrive off the field? Oakbridge Wealth Management, led by wealth manager Chris Anicetti, is your dedicated financial planning ally. But don't take it from me. Take it from the Dallas Cowboys' Tyler Biadasz. He says, Chris set goals financially and has been incredibly impactful in my journey in the NFL. Experience our customized, comprehensive approach, trusted by top NFL players. Don't leave your financial success to chance. Connect with Chris on Instagram at OakbridgeWM_Anicetti. That's OakbridgeWM_ANICETE, and let Oakbridge Wealth Management guide you across the goal line.
First sheet again, big opening, pass 5, pass 10, Vermont's a man, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the carry.
Welcome back to Believe in Badgers on the Believe Network, presented by BetOnline.ag and Oakbridge Wealth Management. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined, as always, by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how are we doing today?
Good. Every day on the podcast is a holiday.
That it is. And it's always a holiday to have Jon McNamara, my other boss, on with us today over from Badger Blitz. You guys probably know Clint and I do Badger Blitz TV for BadgerBlitz.com. John hops on occasionally as well, and we have a great time over there. The publisher of the #1 Badger website in the universe. John, we appreciate your time as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, of course. Before we hop into our little season review, talking and then looking ahead to the portal and bowl game season, want to remind you guys that we are presented by BetOnline.ag, where they continue to be your #1 source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over there at BetOnline. Head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're going to start today, John, by asking a pretty straightforward question. Let's look back on this regular season. What was the high point for the team, in your opinion, and what was the low point of the season?
The high point, Squat Fest, maybe. That was before the regular season. No, the high point's got to be Minnesota. To see a lot of those guys get to have that moment, and obviously I was never on the field and playing in those games, but you've seen a lot of guys go through that moment throughout the years. And it's special. So it was enjoyable to watch a group that has been through a lot in terms of coaching changes and transition and philosophy and everything like that, get to have that moment at the end of the year. So I think undoubtedly that's probably the high point from a season that really just didn't live up to expectations that were set, in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree
If you look,
for sure.
I totally agree. I
think that one other high point, at least in the moment, was the fourth quarter comeback against Illinois. I think that was that was fun to watch, and that's when you kind of started to see the inkling of, or at least the seeds of, an offense that could really perform and put up numbers, and a defense that really adapted well. Besides, maybe struggling a little bit with the scrambling quarterback. The low point. There's a couple different ones I think we could go with, John. I know what mine is, but we're here to ask you.
Yeah, the low point, Indiana. It's got to be, right. That's just a team that Wisconsin's traditionally had a lot of success against. Minus when the quarterback's last name is Randall L. But to go there on the road, I guess playing on the road is difficult. No matter what you're doing, but. That's just not a game where Wisconsin should have lost or has lost traditionally. I think that, and then, that sparked up, a lot of, is this the right offense? Is this the right defense? Is this the right personnel? Is this, losses like that just spark up so many different questions that it had to have been the low point of the season.
Yeah, I agree. Wisconsin was Indiana's lone Big Ten victory this year. That does not say a lot about the program. And the hangover to the next week with Northwestern wasn't pretty either. Now, Northwestern turned out to be a pretty decent team this year, surprisingly enough, with an interim, now full-time head coach in David Braun. But I still think those sort of 2 weeks back-to-back, were very uncomfortable for a lot of people in and around the program, and was the first time I think that Luke Fickell, I think, was really under the microscope. So how do you see, Jon, first of all, this, a lot of the questions, can the 3-3-5 and can the air raid or Phil Longo's version of the air raid exist and succeed in the Big Ten? Let's start on the defensive side of the ball, where I personally am a little bit more optimistic. Where do you see the future of this defense, and how do you see it changing for the future?
I think they have some pieces there at cornerback. That next wave of talent is all Luke Fickell based. Luke Fickell recruited. And if that next wave is ready to step in and contribute next year, I think you feel okay about the defensive backfield. I think safety, if you return everyone, is a position that you could probably say a position of strength going into next season. But it's in that front seven. And Jon McNamara and Turner, I just don't think those guys are 3-3-5 inside linebackers. I think that was maybe the biggest glaring thing. The defensive line was, average, below average. Obviously that unit can improve, but I think the biggest jump or the biggest need is cycling through the inside linebackers that they have now and getting more inside linebackers that can play in that defense, specifically like a guy like Christian Allegro, who, when he was on the field, he just looked different than guys like Turner and Jon McNamara, in my opinion.
Bern, how do you feel about the defense from this season, and thinking sort of what do you want to see moving forward?
Sorry for the technical difficulties here, Jon, as you had some, for some reason, like my computer hates this, but I mean, the defense to me was a real struggle to watch. Sometimes they played really well and they played fast, and sometimes they didn't. The run fits were not there. They made other quarterbacks look like Jonathan Taylor. I mean, to me, those things can't happen. I'm excited for, I guess, what the D-line and the linebackers. I mean, it starts up front. I think our skill guys did really well, but we don't get a pass rush. So you're asking the guys that probably are the better guys on the field to do all these things. And I would agree. I really like our linebacking crew, but I like them in a 4-2 or a 4-3. And I think we asked them to do a lot and to me, the run fits were very difficult, but I also think the passing, finding dudes in open space and trying to get back into their lanes was much more difficult than I think at least I anticipated. So I'm very much looking forward. I mean, we still, again, Matt Perkins, we talked about, they didn't give up a lot of points. Maybe it's because of the teams we're playing, but if that's a positive, I think that's a pretty good positive.
Yeah, I mean, the only team to score more than 30 points was Washington State.
Yeah, and like you said, Bernie, pressure on the edge was almost non-existent. I think going into Minnesota, they had 8 sacks from the edge, from that outside linebacker position, 8.5. That's just not good enough. And I don't think Nick Herbig covered up a lot of problems, because I think that was a great defense, but Nick Herbig helped that defense tremendously with his ability to get to the quarterback. And you can argue whether sacks is a great measurement of successful defenses, but his ability to just disrupt in the backfield, I think, was sorely missed on this team this year, because they just didn't have anyone who could do that or come close to that, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's not just Nick Herbig. It's Nick Herbig, it's Zach Bond, it's Andrew Van Ginkel, it's TJ Watt. It's, the long line of linebackers, specifically outside linebackers, who were able to generate pressure and win the vast majority of one-on-one matchups with the offensive lines, were one of the many reasons that, the teams couldn't really move the ball on them very much at all, quite frankly, in the past decade or so. Let's move to the offense, because the offense is a unit that, I mean, I think some people are calling it a failure. It's too early to call it a failure. It's been 12 games, but there were more growing pains than I think even the most pessimistic of Badger fans anticipated, Jon.
Absolutely. You go into the season, you thought you had 6 big-time receivers who are going to stretch the field and do all those different types of things that an air raid offense does. And the dust kind of settles and you say, Will Pauling was pretty good. And beyond that, I don't know where you could say there was a ton of bright spots, other than Pauling. I think he had a great season, but it wasn't what you thought it was going to be after watching the fall camp practices and looking at a guy like Phil Longo and looking at a guy like Tanner Mordecai and the ability, what he's shown at the college football level. So, largely disappointing, but I did, and I think a lot of other people probably overestimated what that wide receiver group was going to be, because I really did think this was the strongest receiver group that they've probably had since I've been doing this for 20 plus years or so, and that just didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, yes, I agree. It's hard for me to talk about my Badgers this way, but I would say the offense just gave me more questions about, is this something we can accomplish? Did we coach to the scheme or did we coach to the guys we had? Because you have, Braylon Allen's a downhill guy. Everyone knows he's not a shotgun dude. And yet he was in that scheme doing those things. So it gives me more questions. I actually really like Longo. And I think if we give these guys time, they will produce. And when we start getting recruits in, and it's same thing with the defense, right? Like, you can't go from a 4-2 to 3-3-5. It's very confusing. So if we give them time, I'm hopeful, but a lot more questions on the offensive side. And I agree, John, our wide receivers were outstanding, and they only touched the ball 2-3 times, maybe 5. I would love to see Matt Perkins, who had the most catches in like a game. It couldn't have been more than like 6 or 7.
Will Pauling had, I think, 8 against Nebraska. 8 or 9, actually.
So the guy against Minnesota had 9 against us for 121 yards. So to me, is spreading the ball out important, or is like getting a stud dude like a Lee Evans important for us?
It's hard to spread the ball out when you're going 3 and out on 20% of your drives, right? And so when that happens, you just don't have as many plays and as many opportunities to give guys, more of a shot, more opportunities when you're, running so few plays. I mean, they finished 87th in the country in passing and 60th in rushing. It was not a pretty year. And to me, a lot of that started with the offensive line not being a vintage unit in a lot of ways. And, Bernie and I have talked ad nauseum about issues with snapping the ball and the time it took to get from center's hands into Tanner Mordecai's hands, and that or Braden Locke or whoever the quarterback was, and that throwing off the timing of everything. Now I think we saw, maybe I'm the only person who's paying attention to the snaps, like just the snaps on every single play, but that got better finally at Minnesota, I think. But it took, why did it take 12 games to get a snap cadence down, basically?
Yeah, I think that was glossed over, throughout the year. And I noticed the same things. And, in an offense that seems to be built on timing and being exactly crisp where you need to be, an errant snap, even if it's, he's pulling it from the top of his head or, pulling it off the ground. I mean, those seem like big things to me. I'm not an offensive coordinator, but I just think that timing was so important, especially in year one, that when you get thrown off even just a little bit, I think it kind of affects the whole unit. Going back to the offensive line, I don't know what show you guys said it on, but it almost looked like they had 5 right tackles out there. And I will give you guys credit, because this is where I heard it on the show. I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what it looks like. So, and I don't know how you go about correcting that. A guy like Jack Nelson, coming out of high school would seem to be a fit for Paul Christ or for Gary Anderson or for Luke Fickell or for Brett Bielema. So I don't know if it's a development thing. I don't know if it's a thing where Joe Rudolph just went and recruited a lot of 6'7", 300-pound kids and then tried to find holes for them. I do think moving forward, you've seen with guys like, Ryan Corey from Pittsburgh, he's a true interior guy. So I think recruiting more towards here's my tackles and recruiting more towards here are my interior guys could fix some of those issues. But like you said, that comment when you guys said it really stuck out to me. I wanted to make sure I said it on the show to give you guys credit for it.
That's why I'm excited about Emerson Mandel. He's one of the guys that I'm really, because he is an old school guard, man. He is someone I think is going to be a absolute people mover at the next level. Bernie, I mean, we've talked about the offensive line and the rushing attack in general. How can the Badgers improve next season besides just getting like less 3 and outs? Like, what do you see being the most important thing, especially in the running game, to get the offense moving a little bit better, looking like some of the units we saw under Longo at North Carolina?
I mean, I think it starts up front. Everyone will always say that in football, but I think you get a guy like Ches Malusi, if he can come back and be healthy, if there's a possibility for that, he is the perfect fit, I think, for this offense. For me, some of the things that scared me was like we had trouble getting 3rd and 2s, 4th and 1s, like short yardage. When that's like in my brain, our culture is 4th and 1s. Like when it was 4th and 1 anywhere on the 40 going, 40, 50, you could be anywhere almost on the field. Barry's sending out all the heavies, it's 22 personnel, 23 personnel, and we were running power, like we were going for it. So I think we have to regain some of those cultural things we might have lost this year. But the short yardage to me was very scary. Some of the things like for a 5-yard, if it's 3rd and 5, we throw a 4-yard hitch. So I think maybe it's some knowledge. Some guys just need more and more experience. John, I would love to hear, because it does scare me that we've played 12 games and some of the same behaviors are not fixed. So I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on like that.
I don't know if I can enlighten you too much on that. I go back to when sitting on, press conferences with Bo Ryan, and they would ask him, why you guys shoot so poorly at the free throw line? He's, what do you want me to do? Scream at these guys until they start making shots? I don't know how you clean up a lot of those procedural things, the constant mistakes that they seem to have up front this year with, holding and just the penalties galore, other than saying, you're going to take this next series off and we're going to put someone else in who's not going to jump off sides or who's not going to hold. So I guess, through those struggles, I wanted to see other guys, even if it was for a series. Because we heard about that at the start of the year. We're going to play 8, 9, 10 offensive linemen because that's the pace of play we're going to go with. And as we went down the stretch, the last 4, maybe 5 games, you saw the same 5 offensive linemen play. And I'm not saying that that's wrong or it's right, but that's kind of what they trended to. And I'm assuming they felt that those are the best 5 to give them a chance to win. But, as they were going through those growing pains, I did want to see a little bit more within that 2 deep, because I do think they have guys that could go out in there and play. And, at least you got a baseline for what they can do in a real college game.
Attention athletes. Do you want a frictionless and tailored financial planning experience to secure your future? Well, look no further. Introducing Oak Bridge Wealth Management, the premier financial planning firm for professional athletes. Led by wealth manager Chris Anicetti, our team provides a unique and comprehensive approach, ensuring your financial success both on and off the field. We understand the unique challenges you face as a professional athlete, from managing cash flow habits to planning major business purchases and navigating complex contracts. That's why we've developed a proven process, working closely with our strategic partners to provide seamless solutions for your unique financial journey. Our services evolve with your career, offering short, mid, and long-term goal setting, portfolio optimization, real estate investments, and more. As you transition to life beyond the field, we support you with career development and philanthropic ventures. But don't just take our word for it. Top NFL players like Chase Boulier, Tyler Biadasz, Alec Ingold, and more trust Oak Bridge Wealth Management to guide them towards financial success. Troy Dye of the Minnesota Vikings says, "I really love the work that Chris and the rest of the Oak Bridge group do. I especially like the honesty and transparency when it comes to setting up financial goals and plans that best fit my needs and situation. It's time to elevate your financial game plan. Connect with Chris on Instagram at OakBridgeWM_Anicetti. That's OakBridgeWM_ANICETE. And join the winning team."
Do you think the hype and our expectations took over from even like the coaches' coaching, not ability, but their coaching mentality, maybe to say we need to play the best guys, we need to try to win because that's what everyone here and everyone across the nation expects?
I think that's part of it. And I think that goes into a bigger theme of expectations for the year, because when they came in and Phil Longo was made available and Mike Tressel was made available, I mean, they talked about championships. And I go back to the Washington State game where Luke Fickell said, I feel like we do have guys in place to win a championship this year. And as the season wore on, that proved to not be the case. I just don't think they underestimated the talent that was on that roster. Maybe they should have been a little bit more aggressive in the transfer portal. I'm sure those are questions that kept Luke Fickell up at night throughout the regular season. But I don't know. I think everyone just kind of maybe didn't understand how big of a project this was going to be. And there's just a lot that goes into that.
I would say that's exactly what I think it is that people didn't our expectation of the project is bigger than, So I actually love that you said that, because I think that makes complete sense. And my expectation was championship. I was like, man, we got all these transfer portal guys. We've never really done this. The hype is there. Social media led me to believe that we're crushing everything in life, which is so stupid of me, right? Like, I hate social media, yet I believe everything I see on it. So I think the project is bigger, and I think we're going to transition to this, but I think the most important thing for us is, I don't know if transfer portal is, maybe John, you have a different thought, but I think our recruiting has to be top 15 for the next 3, 4, 5 years at least.
Yeah. And, they're right now in this 2024 class. I think they're right where you would want Wisconsin to be. They're fourth in the Big Ten. They're never going to recruit to the level of Michigan. They're never going to recruit to the level of Ohio State. And then Penn State's always kind of been that third team where, Penn State recruits extremely well. That's a really good roster that Penn State has. They just haven't been able to get over the hump of Ohio State and Michigan, obviously. So, they're where they're supposed to be. I think where the expectations are recruiting wise. I think it's a combination of getting those guys in, and that player development piece, I think, was missing the last kind of handful of seasons at Wisconsin or Paul Chryst. A program that prided itself on, hey, we'll bring just about anyone in here if they want to be here, and we'll coach them up to play at this level. I just don't think they had that the last couple of seasons, and that's why I think they've been down really since you can make the case to 2019 or so. I think Jonathan Taylor even covered up a lot of issues that those teams may have had. So, like you said, Bernie, a bigger project than probably anyone anticipated going into the season.
And maybe some covering up, just like you mentioned too, of like, we have these great guys like Braylon Allen who can make dudes miss when the O-line maybe isn't blocking the right people. It does. Yes, I would agree. I think we have to see a lot change. That's just, you can't compete. You mentioned it. We can't compete with Michigan, Ohio State, although we tried to. You could just see we really didn't have a chance. And then you're going to see Penn State. I am baffled by Penn State because they almost had the death penalty, and yet now they're still top 3 in the Big Ten, and they recruit so well.
Yeah.
And I understand geography helps them very much. When I was coming from New York, it's the only big place you could drive to.
Yeah.
And it really was. We got Syracuse or Rutgers, but they really do a good job on like the East Coast and I would say the South pretty much too. But man, we really got to do better than that. We should win the West every year. John, is that not an expectation? Now it's going to change, but should we have not won if we didn't?
Well, that was the other piece of this going into this, where you're like, the West is terrible. And then we found out it was even more terrible than you anticipated it was going to be. So when you talked about championships, yeah, absolutely. They're going to get back to Indianapolis, largely because you thought the group was good going into the season, and the changes that they made were going to be fruitful. But the other piece was the Big Ten West. It's a cakewalk. This side of the division was awful this year. It was just awful. And you're going to see that when Michigan pounds Iowa in about 6 days. And
I was going to ask you what your thought on that game. It's going to be 50-3. They might not even score.
No, I think it's going to be like 27-3. Because Iowa's defense was good enough to win them 10 games. And yes, I know they got the one game they got blown out was Penn State. Right, the one game they got blown out was Penn State at Penn State. But man, that defense has a lot of future NFL players on it. Like a lot of future NFL players on it. They always do. But this is Phil Parker's best job probably ever. He should win the Broyles Award. For the defensive coordinator, best coordinator in the country, I should say. So I am in awe of what that team did with. Listen, man, they won more games with Deacon Hill this year than. That's saying something, man. That's really saying something.
Yeah, I think Michigan jumps out to a 24-3 lead, and then Harbaugh just runs it the whole second half like he did a couple weeks ago and just points his nose up to everyone and says, big whatever you want to say to people. So I don't know. Like you talked about, that defense is great. That offense though is awful. I mean,
they can score 40 points.
You think Michigan's good? I don't think Michigan can score 40.
I mean,
over 30.
Okay.
Deacon was behind Miles Burkett here at Wisconsin. I mean, and if he was on this roster, he might be the 5th quarterback. And that's not a knock on Deacon Hill. I mean, more power to you. I hope he does extremely well. This is not to knock Deacon Hill, but that's the reality of here where he might stack up on Wisconsin's depth chart.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's where he left. Okay, John, we've got you for 3 more minutes.
I can go a little longer, man.
Okay, well,
for you guys for sure.
I will start with this. Last year, the Badgers took 14 guys from the portal by my count. Actually, 13 in a row because of the Michael Mack situation, right?
The number I have is 15. That 15. Might include Mack, though. Yeah, okay. 15 is the number I have in my head.
Okay, so let's go.
Doesn't 14. Make it right, though.
Okay, so over under 14 and a half new portal additions for the Badgers this year.
Had you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said the over, no doubt. And that's, from talking to people that know more than I do, kind of expected a good chunk. I do still anticipate a good chunk, but I don't know what that Minnesota win does to that locker room for guys that were kind of going, I could go either way of like, hey, now we're building something. I don't know how many conversations are going to be had where Luke Fickell says, we just don't have a spot for you either. So I guess I would go above 15, but not huge. And like you talked about, Bernie, Fickell doesn't want to build this through the portal. And I think if there's guys that he thinks that we can make something out of, he's going to do what he can to keep those guys there. He's talked about not wanting to do it through the portal. This year proved that the portal is not the answer for everything. I mean, you had Pauling, you had Nathaniel Vakos, a couple other guys.
Maitre.
Yeah, I thought Maitre was good. And he played a lot of snaps. And they didn't have any other nickel corners.
More than anything else is that he just occupied snaps.
Yeah, there's just – I mean, there are some elite guys in there, but those guys will be bought by other programs. And the rest, what are you going to get through the portal? I think that this year kind of proved that it's not going to solve all that ails you. You can enhance your roster without a doubt. But you can't just say, the portal will fix everything. We'll be fine by January. That's not the case.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with you. Fickell has come out and said he does not want to be a transfer portal guy. He wants to recruit dudes who stay 3, 4, 5 years. So I would say I'm under because I think he's trying to build that. I think the expectation now is still to win and it's still high. But he's got to do it his way. And I think if we go out and start transfer portal, we'll just do it every year and it will never stop. And you don't build a team. Now, I think the interesting thing you said is there's going to be some harder talks than, hey, you're just happy to be here. And if anything, Hunter Wohler said in his piece a couple weeks in his statements, there are some guys who might not be on the fence about this new culture, this new everything, whatever they think. There might be some hard conversations. I never thought of that. So we might see a lot of different people jump ship because for whatever reason it is. But if we can get the guys in through actual recruiting, which I think we can, which I think we've lost in the past, that's how we're going to be winners long term.
One more portal question, John. Portal quarterback, yes or no?
Absolutely. I think you just throw as much talent at that position as you possibly can and see what sticks. And you really can't worry about hurting someone's feelings or hurting someone's little brother's feelings who's committed in the 2025 class. I don't think you can approach it like that. I think Wisconsin has done that in the past where, hey, we got Graham Mertz, we're good now for 2-3 years. I just think you pound that position with as much talent as you possibly can because that's what the big boy programs do. We'll take 2 5-stars in the same class without a doubt, and one of them will be here and one of them will transfer. And I think that's going to be the situation. If I were approaching this, I think Wisconsin will do the same thing of, look, we like Braden Locke and we maybe like Miles Burkett. We like the potential of Nick Evers, but if there's a guy in the portal and he's a fit, absolutely. We're going to bring him here and we're going to say, you have a chance to be the starter there. So that's how I would approach it. That's how I assume this group will approach it. If we learned anything from, the small sample size that we do have, but you have to do that. And to kind of piggyback on that, I would take another year of Tanner Mordecai in a heartbeat. I really would. I might be higher on Mordecai than others are, but if you could get another Tanner Mordecai guy-ish to come in and be that 1 year guy, I would take it in a heartbeat, and I wouldn't think twice about it.
So interesting.
That's very interesting. I'm
very interesting.
I'm not opposed to that. Just of all the quarterbacks who are in the portal right now, if Cam Ward is probably the only one I'd personally really want to kick the tires on, because Mordecai's legs proved in many ways to be just as valuable as his arm. Now, Ward, I think, is naturally more prone to turnovers than Mordecai. Not to say Mordecai didn't turn the ball over at all, because he definitely did. But a lot of people talk about Will Rogers, and I just see Braden Locke and Will Rogers as effectively the same player. Just Will Rogers has seen more football, and that's great. But I don't think Will Rogers is the answer to taking the team to a championship level, just having watched him play in the SEC down here in Tennessee for a while.
In 7 days, when there's 300 more names to peel over, Matt, you might feel a little bit differently too.
That's very true.
Just because you jump into the portal and maybe we take you doesn't mean you're going to be a starter.
Right. And
everything's about competition. I feel like we've lost like this mentality of you have to earn your spot on the field. Just because you did it somewhere else doesn't mean you can go somewhere else and do it. And this competition still needs to be at the top of kids' mentalities, because you're not given a position just because you said yes to come to a school. You have to literally go get it.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. I mean, load that room up, and whoever emerges then is your guy. And I don't, you're not going to make any promises. Obviously, you're not going to do that thing, but you're going to say, look, you can come in here and you can win this starting job. This is what our quarterback room looks like. We have a bunch of young dudes. We like them all, but we'd like a veteran to come in here and push for potential to start this year. And I would absolutely do that if you found a fit of a guy that you thought could win the starting job during fall camp.
But I thought that Coach Fick didn't like seventh-year players. So,
well, if a seventh-year guy is going to help him win football games, I bet you change his mind.
Cam Ward feels like a seventh-year player. He was like Houston Baptist for a while. It feels like he's been at Washington State forever. So, I think last question then for you, John, on the portal outside, not quarterback not included. Your position of need most is blank.
Defensive line, without a doubt. It's not even close. Tight end I'd put up there. I mean, you have someone that could – I mean, they basically didn't have a tight end this year. And that's – Hayden Rucci, I thought, played well in spurts. But he's not a pass-catching – this is the type of offense that I fit well in tight end. Either is Riley Nowakowski. I mean, he's a 6 foot, 250-pound fullback. And, Tucker Ashcraft, I think they're high on. Grant Steck, look, he's going to be a good player. And I can assure you that the Wisconsin coaching staff loves that kid. I don't know if he's a year one, eat up a bunch of snaps type of guy, because I think that's tough. But he's a guy that factors in their long term, without a doubt, I think, if he projects the way that they project into play. But it's defensive line, and it's not even close. But look, everyone is going to be shopping in the defensive line grocery store, in the portal, every single school, and some schools are coming with a bigger credit card than Wisconsin has. So, last year they got Darian Varner, and injuries and whatever factored into, he did not have a great season. So if you can get a guy there, or two or three, absolutely. But I don't know that you're going to get a true difference maker. But I think you just have to, like you said, Bernie, put more guys in there and build up the competition, and have the best 3 or 4, whoever are going to start, kind of emerge from that group.
Yeah, I'm with you on the defensive line. I think that another interesting position to watch will be running back. Should they decide that, either they're not fully confident in Chez's health, they've just got a bunch of these freshmen coming in. We saw Aker and Yakimelli in limited roles this year do okay, but I would not be surprised at all if they find a veteran running back that they like to bring in, who, probably has, I don't think we're going to see another. I think Jackson Aker is going to be the heaviest running back we see for a long time here. I think they're going to be trying to downsize to guys who are more, at the top end, maybe 220, 225 Monty Ball types, more so than we're going to see a Braylon Allen, a Jackson Aker, even like, I think of PJ Hill as one of those bigger guys like that as well.
Yeah, even like Atuka, who they're taking in the 24 class, you talk to people like, yeah, we're going to get some of that baby fat off. They're not thinking like Ron Dane. They're thinking like a Monte Ball type of like when he came in, and when you kind of got him in that program and he started to look real good. I think that's what they're thinking for Atuka. And, not to continue on with that running back position, Dylan Jones and Darian Dupree, I think, are guys who contribute year one, especially Dupree. This offense seems to be written up, designed for a guy like him. And I do think he has the talent to contribute year one. I don't know if that's, Jonathan Taylor's starter reps year one, but he's a guy that's going to help this offense, I think, quite a bit, immediately when he gets on campus.
Listen, I think Atuka is going to contribute year one. If you think about what they want to do with some of those one-cut downhill runs, like he does in his tape, he does that better than the other guys. I mean, that's
all his film is. It's one cut and boom, go.
Yeah, downhill. I mean, he runs people over like Bernie.
That's what I thought when I was watching the tape. I said, this is Matt Bernstein.
Yeah. I do this in the athletics and all the other stuff. Listen, it's because John, I know we have to let you go, but I think we had a lot of guys in places they were not prepared to play. Like you said, Hayden Rucci. To me, he's a hand in the ground guy. And Novakowski's a fullback, playing tight end, running. And I think these guys produced okay for us, but in the way that a guy like an Owen Daniels would just be dominant. And, it's without a doubt. So, obviously he's a Super Bowl champion, but I mean, guys in that mold, right? Those are the guys I think we're looking for. And I think we plug some gaps with guys that just they're not built for that offense. So I think we see a lot of young people play. And I think this offseason is going to be very telling on kind of the vision or where we're going with this team.
Agreed. Yeah. Not to extend the show another hour, but, you kind of saw, you brought up one of the bigger themes of this year. Are they trying to fit a square peg into a round hole on both sides of the ball? And a lot of it is personnel. And a lot of it is exactly what you just talked about. I tend to think like you, Bernie, that they just dive in head first and say like, look, we're going to find the guys, and you might be a little bit on the younger side, but we're going to put you in because you fit what we want to do. And it's at positions like tight end, and it's at positions like inside linebacker, where it's like we have a philosophy on either side of the ball that we know we want to do, and we know we want to implement. We just can't do it 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We're just going to jump in. I anticipate that's what's going to happen in year two, because you don't have a lot of time to waste. This is big time college football, and things move at a fast pace. So you can't say, let's give it another year of this blending of the best, or whatever Trussell said at the start of the year. So I think they got to jump in and do what they're confident doing right away when spring camp opens.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see growth of some of the guys who are freshmen this year. Amari Snowden's probably going to be the guy that everyone wants to keep an eye on with his athleticism. And also, think that a guy like Kyan Barry Johnson will come in and contribute early at wide receiver, because I still think there are going to be snaps available for guys, because this year, I think outside of Will Pauling, you don't think anyone really necessarily performed up to where we expected them to, whether it was Bryson Green because of injury, CJ Williams because of a lack of snaps, Chimere Dike because of, an injury and kind of lack of targets when he was out there on the field, Skylar Bell with the drops. So I think that we're going to see a lot of competition at the wide receiver room. And despite returning most or all of the starting lineup, I think there's a chance that only Will Pauling is the only one who is backed truly as a rotational receiver. Bryson Green too, but who knows? But
I'm here for the hot takes.
I am, especially assuming that Jim was honored at senior day. I'm assuming he's leaving. That's my assumption. I haven't heard anything to the other, on the contrary. So we'll leave it at that. And we will leave it at that with this episode. John has to get back to work running the best Badger website anywhere in the galaxy. Badger Blitz, badgerblitz.com, part of the rivals.com network. Make sure you are over there all the time, signing up. 75% off. Phil McGrath, I think I saw a holiday. There's a holiday sale going on right now, John.
just ended, but I appreciate you.
I'm so sorry. So sorry. It was a Black Friday sale. We just missed
They don't call it Cyber Tuesday, Matt. They call it Cyber Monday.
Good grief. I didn't know how long it was extending. I'm sorry to get your hopes up. Maybe there'll be another sale around the holidays, though. Who
Hopefully,
knows? Also, a great gift to give for the Badger fan in your life. And for everyone, thanks for tuning in to Believe in Badgers on the Believe Network, presented by betonline.ag and Oak Bridge Wealth Management. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure to rate, subscribe, give us 5 stars wherever it is. That really helps us grow. So appreciate it again. Until next time, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Can't do it, but I appreciate you, boys.